among us who in the past closed their eyes to events abroad because they believed that what was taking place in Europe was none of our business, that we could maintain our physical safety by retiring within our continental boundaries. To those who would not admit the possibility of the approaching storm, the past weeks have meant the shattering of many illusions.
Winter, 1944. Frozen fields in Belgium. A German sergeant stumbles forward, uniform torn, covered in ash, hands raised. Behind him, total destruction. Craters everywhere, burning vehicles, bodies scattered across the snow. He had barely survived the Battle of the Bulge. As American soldiers surrounded him, he muttered something, broken English, about the shells, the sky, the noise. And here's the strange part. They kept hearing it, over and over again, from prisoner after prisoner, the same words, the same fear. But what they didn't know,
Hitler had offered him a deal where he said, we will not invade or bomb you, and we will let you have your empire, just call off the war. And then Hitler thought that he would turn his attention then without a worry over either Britain or the United States, and he could turn his attention to the Soviet Union.
Was where those men were going next. Because that sergeant would soon arrive somewhere secret, a place that officially didn't exist. On the banks of the Potomac River, hidden, guarded, silent. Inside, microphones were everywhere, recording everything, every conversation, every thought. Prisoners talking freely, believing no one was listening. Those recordings stayed hidden for decades, and when they were finally revealed, a pattern emerged. Generals, infantry, veterans, teenage recruits. Different backgrounds, same conclusion, about fighting Americans. And what they said changes how we understand the war, because on paper, Germany had one of the most powerful armies in history. Blitzkrieg, rapid victories, elite training, disciplined soldiers. Their tactics were studied worldwide. Their armored divisions rewrote warfare. And early on, they didn't take Americans seriously, at all. Nazi propaganda mocked them. Hollywood, jazz, weak. Even German commanders believed it. Until 1943, Kasserine Pass. American forces collapsed, retreated in chaos, thousands lost. The Germans saw it as proof. They were right. But then, something changed. That confidence turned into something else. Not respect, something closer to fear. Because it wasn't the soldiers themselves, it was what followed them, what they could call in, from the sky, from miles away. Something German soldiers couldn't stop. And to understand why, you have to understand the place where all of this was recorded. Fort Hunt, Virginia, a secret intelligence site, hidden in plain sight. Barbed wire, guards, strict silence. Even the soldiers working there didn't know the full truth. Thousands of prisoners passed through. Generals, scientists, commanders, all interrogated. But that wasn't the real purpose, because the most valuable information was never forced out. It was overheard in quiet conversations between prisoners who thought no one was listening. Every room was bugged. Microphones hidden in lights, walls, furniture. Prisoners talked freely, believing no one was listening. Outside, men sat in silence, headphones on, recording everything, every word, every detail, day and night. And it worked. Thousands of reports, weapons, troops, secrets, all revealed. But here's what made it even more powerful.
Winston Churchill came in, and Churchill was determined to not surrender, not negotiate, but not only fight the Germans and the Italians, but defeat them. Now, this was a very strange idea because within 3 weeks there would just be Britain and there would be all of occupied Europe. So what was in the mind of Winston Churchill? Why did he think that he could afford not to negotiate?
The interrogators. Many were refugees, former Germans. Some had lost family to the Nazis. Now, they sat across from them, calm, friendly, playing chess, sharing coffee, talking philosophy. No pressure, no force.
And that's why it worked. Because when prisoners felt safe, they talked more, much more. And when the war ended, everything was almost erased. Documents burned, evidence destroyed, secrets buried. For decades. But not all of it disappeared. Because the British ran the same operation. Trent Park, outside London. Comfortable rooms, hidden microphones, German generals talking like no one could hear them. Over 100,000 pages of transcripts. And when those records came out, they revealed something unexpected. Because German soldiers didn't talk about American skill. Not really. They talked about something else. 3 things: artillery, air power, and supply. That's what stayed in their minds. Again and again and again. American artillery terrified them. Not just the power, the speed. Call it in, and within minutes, destruction. Precise, targeted, relentless. Some described shells landing all at once. No warning, no time to react. Others said it followed them.
Even when they moved, even when they hid. And one word kept coming up: the walkie-talkie. Not tanks, not bombers. That. Because it changed everything. One soldier with a radio.
And Churchill said, well, you know what? We can't invade either, so there's going to be a standoff. And that standoff is going to favor us. Because eventually, authoritarians like Hitler and Stalin cannot trust each other. They'll have a falling out. And at some point, they will fight each other, and that will be to our advantage. And at some point, we understand that either the Japanese or the Germans or the Italians will do something stupid and draw the United States into the war.
Could bring down firepower from miles away, instantly. And then came the air. Fighter bombers overhead. Constant. Unpredictable. German units could barely move in daylight. Trucks destroyed before reaching the front. Convoys wiped out. Before firing a single shot. One soldier said it best. They were a burden on our souls. You couldn't move. Couldn't hide. Couldn't even stand in the open. Without fear. And then, the final blow. Supply. Because while Germany struggled, America flooded the battlefield. Endless vehicles. Trucks. Equipment. Rolling in without stop. German soldiers watched and couldn't believe it. Because no matter how well they fought, they were facing something bigger. Something they couldn't outmatch. And deep down, they knew it. German prisoners kept asking one question: where are the horses? The Americans didn't understand. Because for Germany, horses were everything. Artillery, supplies, transport. Millions used during the war. Even elite units depended on them. But the Americans had none.
Ultimately, then, the story of people turns out to be the brilliance of Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt in leading the democracies not just to war, but to a victorious war, and at very little cost in comparison to the other belligerents.
0. Fully motorized, fast, relentless. To German soldiers, it felt unreal. And that shock only grew in captivity. Clean barracks, hot food, ice cream, Coca-Cola. At first, they thought it was propaganda, special treatment. It wasn't. This was normal. One prisoner later said, that's when he understood. Germany never had a chance. Not because of tactics, but because of what stood behind the battlefield. Industry, production, resources. An entire economy, untouched, unstoppable. And the higher-ranking officer saw it too. By 1943, many already knew. The war was lost, not on the battlefield, but in scale. They could still fight, still win engagements,
but they couldn't win the war. One general said it clearly: "The Americans aren't soldiers yet." Then he added, "But they will be. And when they are, there is no possible outcome but defeat." He was right, because even if German soldiers were more skilled, it didn't matter. They were facing something bigger: firepower over manpower, machines over bodies. American soldiers didn't fight to die. They fought to survive, to win, and go home. They used artillery, air power, overwhelming force, not because they were weak, but because they valued life. And that changed everything. The recordings revealed something deeper, not just fear, realization. German officers talked about the war, the atrocities, the Eastern Front, the Holocaust, some with regret, some without. But slowly, they understood what they had fought for deserved to lose. And that's the final truth. Because yes, they feared the artillery, the planes, the endless supply. But behind all of that was something bigger, a system, a country built differently, democracy, law, human dignity. Things they had helped destroy, now standing against them. Today, those voices are almost gone. The soldiers, the prisoners, the witnesses. But the recordings remain. Thousands of pages, conversations never meant to be heard, all saying the same thing. The noise of artillery, the shadow of planes, the endless flow of supplies, and one realization: they weren't fighting an army. They were fighting a system, one they couldn't overcome. The soldier from Belgium, the one who spoke about the sky, wasn't alone. Thousands said the same thing. The Americans didn't fight with men. They fought with machines, with steel, with power. And no amount of courage could stop it. That was the American way of war. And every German soldier knew what it meant. There was only one way this war could end.